India wins a women's T20I series in Australia after 10 years. South Africa and Sri Lanka begin their ODI cycle on the right note with some important championship points secured. And the inaugural auction for the Women's 100 pushed the spotlight on a loaded player list. Let's look at what all of this means. A series that was expected to be fiercely contested saw the rapidly rising women in blue unlock yet another achievement as they took home the series and the 4 points that come with it to go 4-2 up in the multi-format series. There was a clear lack of ownership from the Australian batters as they kept giving away their wickets throughout the series, something that we spoke about even in last week's wrap. The top order especially failed to fire in unison, barring the 100+ run opening partnership in the second encounter. Outside Georgia Wall, none of the top 4 batters in Beth Mooney, Elise Perry and Phoebe Litchfield averaged over 20. It did help that the surfaces in Adelaide, Canberra and Sydney were quite tricky, with only 2 batters amongst those who scored at least 15 runs striking at over 140. Nicola Carey's usage was also a bit unusual. We'd spoken about this last week and also alluded to the fact that T-Mac could potentially come in. Unfortunately, we didn't really see that, but that did not mean that Nicola Carey herself got to play a bigger role. She bowled just 2 overs and batted just the once in the 2 games before being replaced by Grace Harris for the series decider. India's bowlers were once again on song, occupying each of the top 3 spots in the leading wicket takers list. A common feature of the bowling was the way they kept varying their pace, especially Arundhati Reddy, who relied a lot more on her pace of deliveries compared to her counterpart, Darcy Brown. While no one denies the X factor that Darcy Brown brings with her, going wicketless in 8 overs across the 3 matches will be a cause for concern, especially when you've got someone like an experienced Megan Short bench for her. Thankfully for Team India fans, India also arrived with the right 11 in the series decider, playing both Amanjot Kaur and Shriyanka Patil in place of Kranti Gaud. The Offie in particular bowled an impressive spell, accounting for Annabelle Sutherland, Elise Perry and Georgia Wall in her 3-4. With the World Cup coming up in around 3 months' time, it'll be interesting to see how Australia go about their business. Sophie Molyneux was on her captaincy debut, and it would be extremely presumptuous of us to jump to conclusions just based on this one series. But unfortunately, they'll be playing just another series versus West Indies next month before the World Cup, at least as per the FTP right now. South Africa overcame Pakistan comfortably in a rain-affected 41-over encounter. Sunil Lisa's match-winning all-round performance saw her notch up an unbeaten 93 with the bat and then dismiss the dangerous Fatima Sana and the ever-dependable Sidra Amin with the ball. That aside, Sanalo Jafta blitzed her way to bring up a maiden ODI 50 in just 32 balls, helping the Proteas maximize the death overs, scoring 85 runs in the last 9 overs without losing any wickets. It was no doubt some very ordinary bowling from the Pakistan bowlers, but Jafta managed to consistently pepper the offside region with bounties. Her adding more value with the bat only brings in more stability to the South African side. Laura Goodall is also another name I want to see more of. She's been in and out of the side for the better part of the last decade or so and is yet to hit a purple patch as such. But in the absence of Annika Bosch, I think this is arguably her best chance to make that spot her own. She has the technique to succeed in this format, and importantly, she provides a rare LHB option in an otherwise RHB dominant side. Meanwhile, for Pakistan, Nashra Sandhu's quickly overtaking Sadia Iqbal as their lead spinner and was once again very effective in her spell. Both of course are very different kinds of slow left-armers. Nashra is a lot more slower, is a lot more traditional, using subtle variations in pace and bounce to dismiss batters, while Sadia is more of a quickish spinner who tends to get the ball to drift in. And contrary to what the scorecard might suggest, Pakistan were in the hunt after a brilliant 125-run partnership between Sidra Amin and Aisha Zafar. Sidra Amin in particular was uncharacteristically aggressive, scoring bounties at regular intervals. At 4 for 175 in the 32nd over, Pakistan were in a similar situation to South Africa, with the advantage of having a set Aisha Zafar and an in-form Fatima Sana in the middle. A mini collapse over there had Pakistan's tail exposed, and Alia's valiant effort could only get them to 223. Moving to the Americas region, the latest cycle for the ODI Championship began with Sri Lanka visiting the Caribbean islands, and they couldn't have asked for a better result. 2 gritty and closely fought encounters, and they found themselves on the right end of both of them. They've seen different players step up, and it's a good sign that 3 of their top 4 batters in Hasini Pereira, Vishmi Gunaratne and Harshita Samaravikrama have already scored 50s, and it's Shamri Atapattu who's the one without a 50 right now. With the ball too, the surfaces in Grenada have suited their slow bowlers, and they've also been assisted by some excellent catching and ground fielding. In fact, only 4 of the 36 wickets taken in the first 2 games of the ODI series have gone to the Pacers. The biggest talking point, however, has to be Dottin's dismissal in the second innings of the second ODI, when she was adjudged obstructing the field. It was an interesting call because the ball ricocheted off the keeper's pads after passing Dottin wide outside her leg stump, and Dottin for some reason chose to catch it in her hands. A contentious call, no doubt, and one that Sri Lanka would surely not be complaining about. The West Indies top order has failed constantly, and it's been the likes of Janelia Glasgow and Stephanie Taylor down the order who've helped them get to respectable positions in both their unsuccessful chases. While none of the big names in Chinelle Henry, Deandra Dottin and Hayley Matthews have performed well. Not sure if there are any injury concerns, but I was hoping to see Glasgow get to bowl a lot more. They've persisted with Shawnisha Hector over Jazira Claxton, who's primarily been operating as a designated new ball bowler. She's sent down just the 7 overs across both games. Despite being let down by the famed batting lineup, the West Indies bowlers have expectedly performed well. Sri Lanka fielded just the one pacer in Malki Madara, and West Indies might very well be better off bringing an Ashwini Muniser instead of one of Alia Alain or Shawnisha Hector to apply the very same spin choke that's cost them the series. Lastly, the player list for the inaugural auction of the Women's 100 was released, and we couldn't be waiting more for it. At the top of the list are global superstars who will anchor major bidding wars. Beth Mooney, Nadine de Klerk, Richa Ghosh and Sophie Devine are the 4 overseas players to have registered with the highest base price of £50,000. Over 12 countries are represented in the final shortlist, and we can expect heavy interest around names such as Deandra Dottin, Deepti Sharma and Jess Jonathan. Players who not just bring skill but brand power and multi-dimensional value. The privatization of several franchises means that the 4 IPL team owners now expanding to England also bring with them some much needed expertise of how to recruit at an auction. An intriguing subplot with this is how the likes of DC and MI, who also happen to participate in the WPL, fare compared to the rest. The total auction purse is set at £880,000, while teams have made several pre-auction signings and detentions to form a core. Teams were allowed to pre-sign a maximum of 4 players for a sum total of £360,000. Of those players signed, at least one must be a retention from last year's squad. At most 2 can be overseas players, and at most 2 can have held a central contract in either 2024-25 or 2025-26. Some of the retained players includes the likes of Elise Perry, Ash Gardner, Nat Sciver-Brunt, Alice Capsey, Lauren Bell, of course the names keep going on and on. Amongst Indians, Smriti Mandhana and Jemima Rodriguez were both signed by Manchester Super Giants and Southern Brave respectively. It's going to be very interesting to also see if the increased Indian influence in the ownership groups of the franchises lead to more Indian players being recruited by the respective sides. Of course, the 6th season of the Women's 100 will run from July 21st to August 16th. That's your snapshot of the week in women's international cricket. If you're looking for structured, consistent analysis of the international game, subscribe right now. New breakdowns every week.